I don't know where I'd like to start, but I know that one of the things that I'm passionate about is helping people to not be so like skittish around going into their trauma, because we get a lot of like what do you call it, different ways of healing. And I hear a lot of people going, I just want to be cleared, and I just want, to not have to face it or anything like that. And it's like, I've noticed that with trying a lot of different things, being someone who used to have complex PTSD, it's like the thing that really seems to work is when we go toward where the pain's at, and we're able to witness it. And I just find a lot of people are just like, I don't want to go through that again. I don't want to re-experiencing the stuff from, my childhood and stuff like that. And so a lot of times it keeps people like on the fence, and continuing to jump from modality to modality to modality and stuff like that. So I don't know. I've been kind of sitting with, how do we make like shadow work cool again? I don't know.
Which is, it's such a I mean, this is such a good conversation because I opened the door about 17 years ago when when I went through trauma. My dad died, but
Mm,
I was also marrying someone I knew I didn't want to marry, and I
ah,
married him because I agreed. I was 30 days out of a long-term relationship. I'd been with this other guy for 5 years, and he was quite emotionally abusive. And so I came out and jumped straight into a relationship with this other guy who I then
yeah,
got engaged to after 30 days.
yeah.
And then at some point over the course of being engaged and getting married, I remember it was at our engagement party actually, and I was sitting on the side of the couch watching everybody having an amazing time. And I looked around and I went, I don't, I don't want to marry this guy. I don't want to,
Mm,
I don't want to do this. I did it anyway
yeah, yeah.
because I didn't know how to say no. I didn't
Yeah.
know how to, I didn't know how to let all of these people that were so happy about the fact that I was getting married down. I didn't know how to say
Mm,
no. And
yeah.
so in that same year of getting engaged and then my dad passing away, my mum also got breast cancer.
Okay.
So it was like this big year. And then also we moved to a completely different state. So I did like the top four things,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
experience the top four traumas of what you can possibly do. I just gave up everything and moved. And then and then I connected. I don't even remember. I do remember. I got, because I was already interested in spirituality, and I got a book called Opening to Channel by
Okay.
Sanaya Roman, I think her name is. But it's an amazing book which is all about teaching you how to connect to non-physical consciousness, universe, God,
Yeah.
whatever you want to call it. It teaches you how to connect
Hmm.
and get that voice rolling. So I
Yeah.
started that, and then I found out about shadow work. And then I remember sitting down one day, and it took me over a year to connect with all of those different sub personalities or inner child parts, whatever you want to call them. And I met
Yeah.
every single one of them. And
Mm.
then fast forward to now, I actually put everything on hold because I started to think I was going a little bit insane because people weren't doing this really deep shadow work.
Yeah.
Like 10 years ago, people weren't doing this shadow work. There weren't videos online on the internet about intense, deep shadow work. There weren't conversations about shadow work 10 years ago. This is kind of like a new, like the last 5 to 8 years, I think people have really started sharing their shadow work.
Yeah.
And so now I've just lost my train of, I've lost my energy going, where the heck was I going with all of that?
No, it was good.
This part of me's just gone, there's actually, this voice just popped up into my head going, you're rambling, you're being boring, you need to stop talking. And it's that the
Ah,
shadow work is this observer, right? Being able to just be able to do the shadow work, you need to be able to sit in the observer. and to see the
Right.
thoughts and to see the stories and to see the noise so you can actually do the work. And I just had a question pop up into my head that's probably gone completely off on a tangent. And apparently I'm having a tangent day today.
That's cool.
I haven't slept well for the last couple of days. So I feel like my brain's a little bit, whatever, let's just go with wherever this goes.
Yeah.
In what you said, people are really skittish and they don't want to sit in the trauma and they don't want to sit in the feelings. And that was my point, was actually I walked away from all of this. I walked away from the shadow work. I walked away from,
Yeah.
I actually disconnected myself. So all
Don't
the,
blame you.
my crown was like this. It was huge, and 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I just had like voices in my head from
Yeah.
non-physical, but I thought I was going crazy. And so I
Yeah.
walked away and I've just opened up Pandora's box. And I get what you mean of people don't want to sit in the pain, because it is a lot of pain. It is a lot of trauma. It is, and it's not for me, it's not reliving the pain. It's just
Hmm.
being willing to sit in the pain. But I want to dive into that deeper with you, because you say witnessing the pain, and a lot of people use these words, they use these terminologies like let it go
Right.
and witness the pain and
But
sitting
what
there.
does that mean?
But what does it mean?
Yes.
So what is the strategy? Now I feel like I'm back on my path again. What's the strategies that come with witnessing that pain? What does that even mean for you? I know it might be different for me, but what does it mean for you to sit and witness?
Um, so let's just go into one of the modalities that I use. I use internal family systems, which sounds a whole lot like all these different things that you've been talking about. When you said subpersonalities, I'm like, oh, I know what that is. Um, but it's like, let's just use, for example, the way that IFS really came about was when Dick Schwartz had someone who had a eating disorder, and this person had a part who would have them like eat certain things, and then later there's another part that comes up and just like beats the shit out of them about it, and then they have to throw up, it gets them to throw it up. And so it's like being able to get curious about those different parts when they're coming up, and you ask it questions. You're just like, why is it doing this? What does it need you to know? um, like, how long has it been doing that for? What was the event that got this part to start doing this job within the system? Your personality, and you'll get down to a child part, into your inner child, and that's where like a lot of our inner child is a one big thing in our subconscious, but it's like broken into little trauma events that are just, and they're just frozen right there. And so when you're able to get to the child part, the witnessing is that child has never been able to speak about anything that it went through, because it's like put that kid in the closet, shove it down, put it in the dark. And so it's like holding all this trauma for the system, and now it has as much in your authentic, curious, loving space to let that child speak everything that it's been holding for you for this however long. And you get to sit there and you witness it, and you get to feel it. But it's like different, because it's not like, it's not you going through it anymore. It's like that who you were a long time ago, that child version of you is telling you about the pain, and you're sitting there and you're with it. And then eventually it can release it by the elements or whatnot, um, for good. And sometimes you can do like a redo, like whatever it was that they're stuck in, that they like needed that adult, they needed that like external support that they didn't have, which is why they internalized the pain and had to have different parts of the personality pop up to guard against ever feeling that shame again, ever feeling that abandonment again. um, and you get to be that for yourself. It's just it's It's a beautiful experience.
It can be. I don't know if I'd use the word beautiful.
Okay, yeah, no, I understand that. I do.
But it can be, because once you get into once you get into the feeling, and the feeling actually shifts. So you go, I'm doing it a lot at the moment because I'm
Hmm.
working with my eating disorder. Um,
Yeah.
which I'm so excited and so proud of myself, because I am on the other side. So I was
Mm,
very much, even last week, I was very much in the trauma of the eating
yeah.
disorder. I was very much in the shame and the punishment and the guilt
Yeah.
and the hurt and all the stories that had led up to
Yeah.
me ending up with an eating disorder in my 40s. And sitting with that, and I don't know, it hasn't, for me, it hasn't even been sitting with it. For me, it came, I have had to go through a lot of approval, because so much
Oh,
of my pain, it hasn't necessarily come from shame, it's come from disapproval, like
yeah.
mammoth disapproval, just for me being me and me
Mm,
existing. Just the fact that
yeah.
I breathe is enough reason for me to be disapproved of and punished.
Oh,
So a lot
shit.
of mine came from disapproval and punishment. So for me, it's been, and I have this feeling at the moment that goes away and comes back, but it's really intense. And I'm about to start doing exactly what I just did with my eating disorder, which is kind of what you said. It's sitting there and it's feeling the feeling. And for me, it's looking at it and saying, I approve of this feeling right now.
Hmm.
And I
Yeah.
approve of all the choices that I have made in my life that have led to this feeling right now. So a lot of the work that I've been doing on myself has to be in the moment right now. It
Hmm.
can't be some big generic, I am approved, because that,
Yeah.
like, there's too, you understand, there are too many layers. There's like
Yes.
5,000 layers, and I can't just say I approve of every layer. I have to
Right.
do one one moment, not even one layer. It's like one minuscule
Yes.
moment in that
Absolutely.
entire layer. And
Yeah.
then once that shifts, and then I guess if I have a look at it now and go, yeah, okay, it is beautiful on the other side. Because once, now that I'm past the eating disorder, and I even took, which was weird because I haven't done this in over 10 years, but I took my daughter to the beach yesterday, and I just made the spur of the moment decision to go and get Thai. And it's like, wow, I'm going to get something that's not organic, that's got white rice in it, that's got, that has tofu in it, that has vegetables that probably came out of a freezer, like all of this, all of the stories that I have wrapped around food. Um,
Yeah.
I I'd really love to kind of hear, if you wouldn't mind sharing some specifics of how you have used the internal, what is it, internal family systems.
Hmm.
Yeah, so how have you used that on yourself? So did you have some trauma that you went through and you've used it on yourself, and then you've come out the other side of that trauma? Like you mentioned, you got CPTSD. So how did you use that for your CPTSD?
Um, okay, so specifically, so I was in session, and I had, so the child parts are called exiles because they're exiled from the system. There's exiled to the, the deepest reaches.
Mm-hmm.
And I had my son killed himself.
I'm so
And so
sorry.
it's okay. I had a little child part come up, and it was presenting as him at a younger age.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I got to witness, and it's like, it's amazing because he was like he was pretty much raised by his grandmother.
Mm-hmm.
And I he was telling me about wishing I would have came back when I said I was going to come back. And the redo, we had a redo together, and it was me coming back and taking him when I said I was going to.
Mm.
And I got to put him in the car, and then we went on into life. And I felt like this amazing like shift in that moment to be able to get to do that,
Mm.
um, and to get to take him home, and to get to be his mom. That's a whole big long story. I'm sure you can tell. And I got to witness his pain of not having a mommy,
Mm-hmm.
and I got to. There's also reparenting, so get to hold him and touch his head, and yeah, it was just yeah, it was really beautiful, and I was able to let go of the shame that I felt for not being able to be in his life, for yeah, just all the things I should have done, and just feeling completely worthless and incompetent,
Mm.
um, and all of those things just like completely shifted out of my system
Wow.
when that burden was healed.
Yeah. And did you
Yeah.
do that through, so did you link that to your childhood?
So I had another one coming up that, yes, it was two of them, and it was him posing again. His name's Skylar. And it was me, and we were both the same age, and they were both really young, and they both held like uh feeling like mommy didn't love me,
Mm-hmm.
and wishing they were never born. So it
Mm.
was like my me and him like totally sharing the same burdens. And it was because his grandmother would tell him that I didn't love him, and I didn't come back because I didn't want to be his mom.
Mm.
And I didn't know that. And me, I had my father and my mother, yes, wishing I was never born. And though I got to witness all of what they were holding inside of them. And just like it's like anyone, we want to be loved and held in our burden,
Mm.
before we can be seen as, beautiful and complete and all these things. And so you're just like loving exactly how they are, and just seeing their wholeness in that space while they're, letting go, uh, sharing their burdens. And yeah, yeah, it was very beautiful. I felt like, there was something wrong with me, real time right now. There's something wrong with me, like I shouldn't have been born. And I was like, what was that from, and it's like that was where that was from. And when that shifted, I felt like um very grateful for my existence, and just more firm in my purpose, and um whatever this life is supposed to be about. Like I felt completely like I belonged here, and that was really huge for me.
Do you mind if we unpack some of that? Because I'm in that space now, that space of, like I said, punishment for me just for existing,
Yeah.
which I get you get, and just feeling completely unwanted, like
Mm,
completely unwanted.
yeah.
And and I think that's what this feeling is that's left is, and I don't know if it's like this for you, but I wake up in the morning and it's here, and I go about my day and it's here, and then I end my day and it's still here. And then I can wake
Mm,
up in the middle of the night and it'll still be here. Just this constant feeling of just unwanted. Like, unwanted is such a good word. Not
yeah.
only unwanted by my mum and my dad, but almost like unwanted by life.
Okay.
So I kind of really like to understand, get a little bit more understanding of how you healed that part. Like what kind of things, if you remember and you want to share, what kind of things did you have to say to yourself? What conversation? Sorry, I've got a cat on the table and her
Yeah.
tail's in the
Your tail's famous.
way. Yeah, what kind of conversations you needed to have with yourself to have that shift where you now know your sense of purpose and you now feel like you're worthy? Because I don't have any of that. I don't get any of that feeling worthy
Mm,
to be here. I feel like I take up a lot of space that I should not be taking up.
yeah. No, most people that carry that, do feel that same thing. I hear that a lot with my clients. I just feel like I'm taking up space, or another one's like I'm wasting space, you know.
Yes.
Um, so it's like being able to go in that way. Um, you get to talk to what they call the protectors. So it's like when you first go in, you're like talking to the ones that are coming up to shield from feeling that unwanted, you know?
I'm taking
And
notes. You're the first
okay.
interview. You're the first conversation I've had where I feel like, no, I need to take notes. So if I'm looking down, it's because I'm writing.
All right, good to know. um, and so it's like what would come up under, above unwanted would be like, um, let's say the overachiever, the perfectionist. Um, there can be like a warrior. I mean, there's like different parts of the personality are formed in order to make sure, your inner critic. That's what that reminded me of when you were talking about like, I don't remember what it was, but it was like earlier when you're like, oh, you shouldn't be doing this, or oh, it was the part that said, you're rambling,
Yeah.
you're supposed to be doing this and that. It's like inner critic, that could definitely be. And it's like, those are the parts that are like, you have to start to get to know before it's like safe enough in order to actually go to the little ones. And so when you're talking to the protectors, you would be asking them questions like, one, you have to find out like where in or around your body you're experiencing this part, for one. And this is like helping to make that connection to start that relationship, because all these parts are pretty young. They're young parts because they start at young ages, and so they assume that someone who's talking to them is probably just another child. So you're like, do you know who I am? Do you know how old I am? And a lot of times they'll say stuff like, 7 or 8 or 5 or something like that. And so where they began at that point. And then you do an update. You let them know, the system's actually, my age is, I'm 42. Like, I'm 42. And sometimes I'll show these parts like different clips from, let's say, 6 years old until 42, showing them. And it's 2023. And they're just like shocked because they're just like frozen in 6-year-old land. You know what I mean? And like everything's still happening. And they start to soften. And a lot of times, not always, because a lot of times there's a trust thing. You're
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I don't know what you're trying to front here, but so you're curious, and other parts can come up, like anger and anxiety, or distracting parts. We all have those blanking out parts, that are like, yeah, we just want to stop and, screech, the progress in this. And but as you get to know a part and you're like, okay, so what's your role? What do you do for me? Um, you know, uh, I make sure um, I make sure that you stay on task and you do a good job, you know. And you could and you could be like, when did staying on task and doing a good job, become so important to you? Oh, and it'll tell like an event. Well, back when I was learning piano, and my mom was teaching me how to play piano, and she just rode me, and when I would mess up, and just shame me, you know, and so I knew that I had to get this right. I have to get everything right. And then another follow-up question to kind of help to get to where the trauma actually lies. It's like, um, what are you afraid would happen if you didn't get it right all the time? And they'd be like, well, I would be shit. I would be shamed. Um, Mom wouldn't love me. I mean, these kinds of things. And eventually, when the system feels safe enough, it'll show you the little one, and the one that actually holds the shame. And mom doesn't love me, and I'm just shit, and I'm not valued. I'm worthless. And then you get to go there.
How exciting. It's like, yay, can I sign up for that, please?
Yeah. No, I understand. It's like at first, I was it was really hard, to do. Um, but I don't know. It's like there's like a fire in me. I suffered greatly like my whole life, and when you were telling me about like your parents and stuff, and kind of where spirituality was bubbling for you, it was like I played around with it um, since like 2008. And what really got it was my mom had glioblastoma,
Mm-hmm.
and I took care of her. And I was actually there when she was dying, and she was just like holding on. She was like she would like all of a sudden gasp for breath, and her eyes would get really big, and she was trying to hold on for my brother that was really late getting there. And I gave her permission. I said, you can let go. And when she let go, and I felt her spirit just go. And I knew what the cancer was about. It's like a lot of people talk about like, oh, you got to eat clean, you got to do this and that. My mom ate the cleanest. She had a lot of unconscious guilt in her, and she couldn't let it go, and she couldn't face it, and it killed her. And I just going through that experience, I was like, I'm not going to waste my life. I'm not going to waste it anymore. So I was in a very unhappy marriage. I was married to the same person for almost 10 years, and it was loveless. And I didn't have, the capacity in myself or the courage, to feel like I could take my children and go out there in that great beyond, unknown. And it was like, it took me about a year, but after that, I was like, I will not waste my existence anymore. I'm going to go out there, and I'm going to find happiness, whatever that means.
Mm-hmm.
And her death was really what really sparked it for me. And then my son, after meeting him, I hadn't seen him since he was 3, and I met him when he was 18, and he had schizophrenia.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, it was so surreal, because all of a sudden, that what's coming out of his mouth is like absolute insanity. And he killed himself exactly 6 months after I met him.
Wow.
And I thought I had like all this time, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
all this time to rebuild and to have that relationship that we were denied, you know, for a long time. And it was just like, it was almost like a sick joke, you know. And I started just going down fast, and I had other children, and I was in a new relationship, and I had to do something. So that's really where I started going in the trenches and reclaiming myself.
Which I really want to take a minute to honor, because you've been through a lot, and to be
Yeah,
willing to go into it, it takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of courage to do this work and to do it
that's
well
true.
and to come out the other side, because it is, I think it is the hardest work. It's really easy to manifest and be positive and have positive thoughts all day and to create some
Right.
amazing life. That's
Yeah.
easy. It's this is hard, and it takes a lot of courage. So I really want to honor you on your willingness to actually do the work.
Thank you.
Um, I'm feeling all the feels at the moment. Like I am feeling just all of what you've been through, and it makes me sad, but it also makes me proud. Um, I don't want to sound condescending, but I'm really proud of the work that you've done.
That's not
Like,
condescending.
coming from someone who's doing the shadow work, I've been doing it for a long time, and but I've never
Yeah.
had to go through the level of what you've been through. I'm thankful that I've never had a child um with a life who's ended, and I can only I my best friend, her son passed away recently, and I'm
Mm,
watching her go through it. And I
yeah.
also interviewed another lady, Kate. Actually, her show goes up next week, and her son also committed suicide.
Yeah.
And it's such a hard journey, and
Oh, yeah.
I I don't know how you come through the other side of that, but I'm so proud of the fact that you have.
You have a lot of help.
Yeah, I imagine you do.
Yeah.
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 Mm, be cool. I feel like anything else I ask is just completely inconsequential now. It's like nothing is more valid than what you've just done. Um, but
I
for
think
the
honestly, it's all valid.
yeah,
And it's
it
just
is.
like all of it's trauma, you know, it doesn't
It
matter. It's
is.
just the content changes, but it's still trauma, and the impact that it has on us is really the same, you know, in a lot of ways.
Yes, and I actually just heard in my head a voice that said, "Don't minimize other people's trauma because they haven't been through as much trauma as somebody else."
Right.
And it's like, oh yeah, thanks for pulling me up on that. Because I could hear, because while you were talking through all that, and in the beginning when you were talking about the protectors and the warrior and the inner critic and the overachiever and the perfectionist, I heard something. And then as we've been talking and you've just shared, there's this part of me that came up and said, no, you can't share that now, because that's irrelevant now. And so, of course, it's all of these voices that just constantly pop up and give us
Yeah.
this opinion, this
Hmm.
opinion of what it thinks about the situation. So it would be really easy for me to now make the choice to minimize myself and to not
Right.
share the realization, because there's another part of me that feels like what I'm experiencing is nowhere near as important as what you've experienced.
Right.
And then isn't that what we do?
Yes.
We get raised to minimize ourselves and to think that we're not as important,
Yeah.
and our problems are not as important as somebody else's problems. And I mean, how many times you're in the same 40-year-old age bracket I am, and so you're probably raised with that same mindset of, well, your life is not as bad as the people who are in the middle of a war zone, So you don't really
Right.
have the right to complain or to have any problems at all, because and how many times do we hear, if you have a roof over your head and you can afford to feed yourself, then you're better off than 90% of the world's population right now.
Right, right, right. Programming. Yeah, absolutely.
So much of
Yeah.
it of just minimizing. So I really wanted
I
to share. No, please say what you're going to say, and then I'll share. I'll
okay.
share what I heard before.
Absolutely. Thank you. No, I actually just noticed I was doing that same thing this morning. See, I'm reading a book by someone that I have learned from in IFS and has just released a book. And he was going through his childhood sexual abuse. And his childhood sexual abuse, I had a part, well, his childhood sexual abuse sounds worse than yours. You don't have any reason to complain. So I totally understand what you're saying. I'm like, damn.
Quick message before we get on with the show. Please make sure you do like and subscribe. Even pause the video right now to go and like and subscribe to this channel, because these podcasts, these conversations are getting so deep and we are sharing so much amazing content. And I hope you are getting something from this as well. So pause it, like, subscribe, and then let's get on with the show. What I was going to say.
Yeah, I wrote notes. Like I was sitting with like, because I had time to, because we didn't finish our conversation. I was like, you wanted to go to either minimizing or like successful people within that frame of um protectors of the overachievers or whatever. So whatever you wanted to go, I feel like you can do that.
Excellent. I was so bummed, but for the first time ever, the internet just dropped out and it was out for about
Okay.
20 minutes.
Okay.
Um, but I actually want to go with what we were talking about, because when you were talking about, I just had this thing drop into my head that I hadn't thought of before. And when you were talking about the protectors, the unwanted, the overachiever, the perfectionist, the warrior, and the inner critic, when you said overachiever, in my mind, I had always had the perspective that people with this kind of trauma that go down that path of being an overachiever and a perfectionist, they're the people that have these like incredibly successful businesses or successful lives, and they overachieve, and they're the workaholics, and they're the ones that do all that sort of stuff. But what I realized, and I haven't sat with it, but I know there's probably a lot of grief around it. What I realized is that I am the perfectionist and I am the overachiever, but I am, because I was kind of always deemed as the failure. This is my perspective, because my perspective of how people deemed me in my family was to be the failure. I wasn't
Mm,
smart. I was pretty, school system didn't work for the way my brain functioned. So, of course, I failed every subject that there was.
mm,
Um,
yeah.
but what I realized was that I am overachieving and I am a perfectionist at failing. And so I
Okay.
am highly successful at failing, which is exactly what I was raised to believe I would be. So I am actually, like most people in this position, the epitome of that. But instead of being a high overachiever for success, I am a high overachiever for failure.
Okay.
That's what I wanted to, that's what I got from out of that. And that, I think that's going to be a big answer to me shifting some of this failure, going, oh, so I am an overachiever. I just, I just do failure very, very, very well.
Yeah.
So that's kind of,
That's interesting.
yeah, that's where I was at. That's what I wanted to share with you before the call. Well, that's what I was sharing with you before the call dropped out.
No, thank you for sharing that. That's really interesting to, to come plop into your lap.
Mm.
Yeah. Um, yeah, when you were saying that, it was reminding me, because when we were talking about like, healing and how hard healing can be, for people. And so I was just kind of sitting with that. And there's like other things that come into play that can make healing like way more problematic than it has to be. And when you were saying about this belief of being like a overachiever for failure, It's like those are things that can be like coming down through like uh ancestor after ancestor after ancestor. So it's like we're not just sitting with, like the original thing we were talking about of being unwanted or, feeling like a failure. I mean, that could be something that's just like trickled down. And now it's kind of sitting in your lap and it's fullness.
Mhm.
It's like, what do I do with that? And that's another part that I'm really fascinated with. And uh, I just love to do it. We call it ancestral burdens.
Mhm.
And it's just those are beautiful things to clear. I know I'm saying the word beautiful again, but it's like when you actually are able to clear it, it's like just the space, and to see that, oh, this really isn't mine, and to see where it actually, because sometimes in like an IFS session, like great grandma will appear like as a part in their system, and she'll have like this burden that people have, like, the client has felt like it was theirs and part of them and stuff like that. I have so many examples. And it's just crazy because it's so strong, and it becomes like a complete worldview of like what's your, like how you're seeing the world. It's like that's all over your glasses, and that's the only thing that you can see, and because it's so deep.
Mm. Yeah, I haven't ever really done the ancestral stuff.
Mm,
Um, but even I can see the patterns in the ancestral, like the
mm,
patterns of the trauma, the patterns
yeah,
between just the simple patterns. If you look at basic addictions, my grandpa was an alcoholic, and then my mum was an alcoholic. And
yeah,
and then when my mum actually did the whole family tree going back like
okay,
centuries, to my great 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 grandparents or something. She went so far back. And a lot of the stories, interestingly enough, were of women who had been abandoned
mm,
by their partners. I don't think there were any relationships where the husband and wife got married, stayed together, and then died together.
right,
Except maybe my grandma, but their relationship was horrible. And my grandpa actually died really young. So I think
mm,
had he gone the extra, 30 years, maybe they wouldn't have stayed together. I don't know. Um, but yeah, the ancestral trauma, and it's interesting for me because whenever someone talks about heart disease or cancers or any kind of illness, really, and they talk about how it's a genetic trait that you can go and get your blood tested and see if you have the genetic markers for those
right,
diseases. And I sit in a very different perspective of, well, I want to know what the emotions are. I don't believe in
mm,
genetic traits, things that are handed down physically. I believe in things that are handed down emotionally. And that same emotional trauma that gets handed down creates the same emotional
yes,
disease. And in my
absolutely,
family, cancer is really common, breast cancer especially. But of course, breast cancer to me is all about love and nurturing and self-care and self-compassion,
yeah,
which none of the females in my family that I know have for themselves. And
yeah,
and I think most of the females in my family have died from breast cancer or they've had breast cancer.
right, amazing.
Mm. Um, you did share that you wanted to do a poem. Do you want to do you want to read it now?
I can, if that feels good to you.
Mm. Let's do it.
Okay, okay, okay. It's called The Grace of Grief.
Beautiful.
Grief whispers her beauty through the thrashing of tears, through the agonizing, screaming faces that don't have names. But I hear them. I see them within. Sometimes they are me, all at once. A foreboding, winding staircase that only has one direction. Every step is met with a punch to my chest, breathless as I continue to descend into darkness. From this place of darkness, the drowning goes on for eternities, until everything came to an unexpected halt. Even the walls hold their breath, not wanting to disturb the silence. It was as if I was washed upon the shore and then set myself to wringing the water from each and every strand. Darkness became darker and darker still, until light suddenly began to take it within its folds. A mystical kaleidoscope of dark and light, light then dark, till there was no distinction between them at all. From this place of emptiness, I found a part of myself that had yet to be born. She was waiting. Everything had to be taken away. The agonizing screams understood. The gift of the wound accepted. The grace of grief received.
Wow. And what does that represent or heal for you?
It's like it's the journey, because a lot of times we hear about healing and how it's just this mystical, magical thing that happens. But the thing is like through it, there's moments where it is lovely and you're feeling that grace and you're feeling like the light and a little bit of who you are. But in between that, there is where you get swallowed up again and you're fighting, from drowning and coming back to the surface. And, then you can set out to heal another layer. But it's almost like a dance. It's like that back and forth dance. And eventually, like going, it's like from one extreme to another, we can go way deep into the dark pits and then we come to the light. And it's like eventually the momentum finds like a balance. And it's like when grief is actually properly moves through our body, it's not something that we necessarily like need to like let go of, whatever let go of means, or to
Those unicorn
dispel.
words.
I know, no, I agree, I totally agree. It's something that doesn't dispel, it's like something that we move through us, and eventually after it moves through us, we come to a space of gratitude. And so I went from like being very angry and like shaking my hand at God, like, what the fuck? And it's like, and then, now I'm like, my child was going to commit suicide. No matter what I did, at least I got to meet him.
Yeah.
At least I got to hear him tell me he loves me, and that I got to, he was writing a book. I got to help him edit it. I got to speak with him and fight with him, and do all those, mother-child sort of things. Yes, in a short period of time, but I got to do that before he got off the bus,
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm really grateful. He taught me. He has been the biggest person in my life who has taught me how to surrender properly. And it's like, if I can get through that, I can get through anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm still amazed that you got through it.
Me too.
And I think I mentioned when we were talking before how just insignificant my grief feels in amongst all of that. But I'm sharing this because I don't want other people to do what I'm doing in my head at the moment, going, what I'm feeling is like it's insignificant now.
Yeah.
Because it is so easy. And because as I'm sitting here and I'm listening to you, I am grieving a lot at the moment, because I'm grieving. Oh, it's going to make me cry. I'm grieving the loss of someone that has been staying here. Something happened a while ago and we got on really well, and she was my friend. And something happened. I don't even know what, but she stopped being my friend, and it's been really hard.
Yeah.
And they're leaving. They're leaving today to go away for a couple of weeks, and then they're coming back for a week while I'm away, and then they're leaving. And so I'm going through the loss of my friend again. But it's not only the loss of this friend, it's the loss of my friend, my best friend in high school. I did something, I still don't know what I did, but I did something and she stopped talking to me and gave me the silent treatment, and I don't know why. And nobody would tell me why. And then it's also the grief of the loss of my sister, because my sister stopped talking to me when I was 12, and I don't know why. I still don't know why, but she stopped. And so when I hear stories of yours, there is this part in my head that goes, God, what does it matter? They're still alive. They're still here.
Doesn't matter.
But it's still
Loss is
loss,
loss.
and it's
Yes,
still
loss is
grief.
loss. Oh yeah.
And this hurt that I've been carrying for 30 years, 35 years since my sister stopped talking to me. It is just such a deep, deep, deep sadness.
Yeah.
Of the loss of not knowing why I lost her as a friend. And it's hard. It's hard when people, because I don't know why this person stopped talking to me. She just came back after being away a different person. And I don't know why. The problem for me is that every single friend I've ever had, because of what happened with my sister, every single friend I've ever had has ended their friendship with me. But I don't know why. I have a list of friends that just stopped talking to me, that just stopped returning my phone calls and didn't want anything to do with me anymore. And these were my best friends. These were close friends. The friends that I had as bridesmaids when I got married, and the two friends that were godparents to my daughter. These were important people, and they just stopped. But one friend did give me some kind of clarity around some of it, because one friend, the one that was my daughter's godmother, we found each other again about 5 years later. I reached out to her and started talking to her again, and she explained to me that, because I was going through the loss of my mum dying, I was going through that, and she shared with me that she didn't understand why I was reacting the way I was reacting, because she still had her mum. And what it made me realize is there's a big difference for people who still have a parent alive,
Yeah.
to people who don't have any parents alive anymore. Like it's a big loss when you lose two parents, especially when you're young. I lost my dad when I was 30 and my mum when I was 42. So I'm not exactly old. They were young. And then it's all that grief. And then we don't let ourselves feel the sadness of the loss and allow the sadness. And I don't know if you got this when your son passed away, but I feel like with any loss, there's this expectation that, well, it's been a couple of weeks.
No, I get that. It's like, and I do that to myself, because it's like this happened I'm sorry for your parents. I lost both my parents,
Mm.
uh 30, 30 and 36. So
Yeah.
yeah,
So you get
yeah.
it.
So I get it. I totally do. And it's
Something
like with my
happens to you when you lose both your
yes,
parents.
yes, you like all of a sudden feel like an orphan, you know, even if they weren't like the best of parents, it's just like
Doesn't matter.
you just feel like an orphan, like your identity is like severed or something like that. But like my son, you know, he died like 4.5 years ago. And at the time, my husband was like going through nursing school, and I had three girls to take care of, and he's like, you got to come back to us. And it was almost like, I don't know, I got in my head that I had to put Skylar away.
Mm.
And I wouldn't even put any pictures of him on the wall or anything like that. Like I had to put that away in order for me to come back to life.
Mm.
And it was just about um, probably less than a year ago that I gave myself permission to properly grieve and to unpack his pictures, to put his pictures on the wall and do what I needed to do before, but do it now
Mm.
and let it show up in any way that it's going to. And then that's okay.
Mm. Grief is such a hard thing to face
Yeah.
and to feel, just to feel all the feelings because I've held it in for such a long time. And I'd already done the work on my mum and my dad and my
Yeah.
aunt and my cousin and my grandma many years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Back when I first started doing shadow work, I did a lot of healing, but I could never touch my sister. There was
Ah,
there was too much. It was too big.
yeah.
I could never I could never look at it. But I think when mum died, it came with so much because I also felt like I was losing my sister all over again.
Yeah.
Because that connection with my mum was kind of like the very thin veil of potential that maybe one day if mum invites me to go over to her place and my sister's there, that maybe my sister will magically become a completely different human being and start talking to me again.
That
But
makes
yeah,
sense.
when my mum died, that opportunity left. But it's not only, for me, it wasn't only the fact that my mum and dad died, it's that I can never repair the relationship. They can never see me past my trauma and past the hurt and past the sadness. They will never see who I become. They saw the damaged me and the part of me that was wrong and the part of me that failed.
Yeah.
They'll never see the happy me or the successful me.
You don't believe that they can?
Um,
We're
I think it's kind
pretty
of different
multi
because
multi-dimensional, you know?
yeah, but
The same.
it's not the same.
Gotcha. No, I get that.
I'll
I get
never
that
get that mum
100%.
and dad. And it's the validation. I'll never get that mum and
Yeah.
dad validation of I'm proud of you or
Uh, yeah.
you've done so well or I'll never get any of that. That
Yeah.
died when they died. And there's such a deep part of me. Like I understand the story of validation because there's such a deep part of me that has wanted that validation from my parents that obviously I'm never going to get. So I have to grieve that. I have to grieve the loss of that validation from them. And I'm now spending a lot of time validating myself.
Good.
And but again, like you said before, it's not some magical unicorn rainbows and fairy floss that one day you wake up and realize you've got all this pain and then you sit down and an hour later you've gone through it and all of a sudden everything is fantastic and fine and you're happy. It's
Right.
this slow arduous, painful, drawn out process.
Yes, absolutely.
It doesn't just happen, and it hurts. And I get why people don't want to do it. I
Yeah.
get why people just go about their day with their head in the sand and they drink and they take drugs and they do
Yeah.
whatever, whatever they need to do to distract, and they go out to cafes and have jobs
Yeah.
and they just live this very simple life because it hurts. And I get
Yeah.
from everyone that I've talked to through the journey of this podcast that there is a doorway on the other side, that you do find yourself at this point where it doesn't hurt anymore. You do get through the sadness and you do get through the grief. But I'm in it right now and it's just so hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
I haven't got any more questions. I think I'm just like, don't ask any more questions because you've opened Pandora's box and it's all just going to come pouring out. um, yeah, I think it's been a good conversation to have with you because you understand intense grief, you understand loss, and even though my sister is still alive, she's still technically gone.
I get that too. I have five brothers and sisters, and they're all
Mm,
alive. And when my mom died, I became mom. So that also came with like all the damaged goods of what mom did to them shining on me, you know?
mm-hmm.
And I realized that, I had to let go of being responsible for taking care of them and making sure they're okay in the ways that they were like, this is what you have to do, because this is your role. And I'm like, no, I am your sister. Um, I've had a lot of backlash from sisters. I have one that does not speak to me either, and so I get it. She and I, it's really hard because her and I were the only ones that had the same dad, and the rest of my siblings had the other dad, which was our abuser.
Mm-hmm.
And it was almost like we were like our own little island. We got through that, together, as like a
Yeah.
unified sort of thing. And because she's never said this, but it's very clear to me, but because I'm healing and because I'm speaking a different language, she's just like, she's like, I don't know who you are anymore. And I don't like who you are. And she won't speak to me. She hasn't spoke to me for years. And I've had to go through the waves of grieving for that relationship because I thought we would always be, always be. And I have a younger sister that, yeah, she just freaks out on me every once in a while. And I mean, that was my little friend. And she'll just, freak out on me and like close the door and tell me she'll make up these words, the words people make up. She said, I am a spiritual bypasser or something like that. And I'm like, what the fuck does that mean? But it was just like, it was always so hard, and then she'll want to come back into my life. And then I'll do something wrong. I won't say enough, or I'll say too much, or, it just became really hard. And it's just like, what am I supposed to learn from this? Because I feel like such an alien when it comes to my family. So I've learned to um, not care, how they see me, and I'm still
Mm,
working on that. I'm not like to the finish line, but that's what I've been working on, not caring how they see me and just being myself and allowing them to be themselves
mm.
and not wanting to change them.
Yeah.
It's been very difficult.
Yep. I want to ask something that I've been doing that I haven't usually done, because my brain ruminates a lot,
Okay.
um, especially around uh, conversation. Like, it has conversation. So especially with the situation that's going on at the moment, it's in my head. It's going, kick them out, declare them trespassing, sell their stuff, get the money. Like, there's this big thing. My brain's just doing all
Yes.
this horrible stuff.
Yeah.
And I had a new voice appear this morning in my head, because as I am facing more and more of my stuff, I'm also dipping my toe in, allowing universe, divine, whatever you want to call it, um, allowing that non-physical wise me back in again.
Mm-hmm. Ah.
And so what I heard this morning was, when my head was ruminating, I just had this voice pop in and go, stop listening to the ruminating and feel the feeling, look at it and just sit with it. And so that's what I started doing this morning. And I think that's why it's shifting now,
Yeah.
is that I was washing the dishes and my brain would go off on a thought trip. And then what I did was I took a minute and I breathed, and then I looked at the feeling, and I just looked at the feeling while I was washing the dishes. And then I wasn't trying to fix it. I wasn't saying you're allowed to be here. I wasn't saying it was okay. I wasn't approving of it. I just kind of got, don't do anything, because anything that I'm doing seems to be with the intention, I'm doing it because I want to fix it or I want to get rid of it. So if I'm saying I
Right.
approve of you, I allow you, I see you, I hear you, I acknowledge you, which is what I have been doing, and it
Mm-hmm.
has worked, and a lot of it does dissipate. I got with this, it's different. I don't need to fix any of this or shift any of this. This feeling, I just need to look at and just let it do its thing, and just keep being with it and just keep sitting with it. And I think that is that deep, just the deep grief, the years and years and years of deep grief and not wanting to feel it.
Yeah.
Um, I thought there was a question in that, but I've come to the end of saying that, and there's no question. This is me successfully questioning somebody on a podcast. There's no question.
It's great.
But
Mm,
it's such a deep feeling. I think it's the biggest feeling I have
yeah.
is this sadness.
Yeah. It's like one of those like where you're like free falling and you're like trying to like grasp onto something to hold on to and you just can't quite get a handhold or a foothold. Yeah.
There's no
Yeah.
fix to it. I can't fix it.
No, absolutely not.
And I feel like that's what I've been trying to do all along, is just constantly fixing this feeling, either with distracting, doing YouTube or Facebook, or you've been on my
Yeah,
phone,
yeah.
or eating or not eating. In my case, some people go eating, mine is not eating, so
Right.
starving.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that I've been trying to constantly either run away from the feeling or fix it, not actually feel it.
Yeah.
Would you say that? Oh, there is a question. Look at that. Would you?
You're so funny.
I'm just so relatable with the voices in my head. Would you say that that's what you have had to do? But would you say that prior to you grieving, you were fixing or distracting or running?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Because it's like it's different parts in the psyche that are like protecting. It's like there's always a good intention, unless it's like a part in your system that doesn't belong there. But it's usually a good intention. It just doesn't always come out that way, the
Mm-hmm.
shenanigans. But it's like the distracting is like, okay, we don't want to go there because we don't want to overload the system. And uh, she's in bed all the time and can't like operate or whatever, so it's like let's distract, and then it's like, oh, we're going to fix this, we're going to make a plan, and we're going to have these steps, and we're going to like go to this modality and try this and go and try that. So yeah, when I was trying to fix it, it just got further and further away.
Mm.
So yeah.
And how did you do the sitting with it? How did you do the seeing with it?
Mm. Different ways, because it's like I've noticed that for myself that at different times it needs something a little different.
Mm.
So I have let's see. So I do the modalities that I perform. So I'll sometimes a piece of it will kind of shift with like body talk, and other times IFS, and then like other times I have a surrender coach, and so we will sit with the energy and welcome it, like just being like, yeah, it's okay for you to be here. Any resistance to it as well, because that's a whole nother thing. It's like there's always resistance to feeling anything that we're going to be sitting with. And so it's like, hey, you come here too, you're welcomed on the couch. and and so like any sort of feelings that are tied into that, it's like all of that's welcome, and just like being with it in the space of um compassion, which is like, I don't want to change you. It's okay for you to express this in any way that you need to express this right now.
Mm.
And yeah, I'm just going to be with you. And it just seems to like let the energy out behind it, because a lot of times, most of our lives we're taught to just push it under the rug. That's what our parents did. That's what their parents did. I mean, and it's just like it just keeps getting shoved. I always see it like a chest, and you know how you keep putting clothes in it and it's so full, and you got to like actually sit on it to latch, the latch and stuff. And I see that as these feelings and emotions and these things that we're just shoving them in there until it's like one day it just latch comes and it's like, ah, and then we like have a freak out and stuff, and then we push it back in again and go about our lives until we have that trigger, and then it's right in our face again. So it's like we could keep living like that, where at any moment it's going to come and bite us in the ass, or we can start doing it, on our own terms, in our own
Mm.
time.
Which it's actually interesting that you say that, because what's just happened with the person that's staying here, that's what I kind of got this morning was, if I don't feel this feeling, and if I keep distracting or avoiding or starving or restricting or whatever it is that I'm doing with this feeling, then this is going to happen again, and it's going to happen again, and it's going to happen
Yeah.
again. And it's just
Yeah.
because this situation is creating the grief. It's created, like it's just, it's the same grief, it's the same feelings that I'm feeling when I lost my sister, and it's the same feeling that I'm feeling. It's that feeling of not only loss, but it's also, I don't want to say powerlessness because it doesn't feel like a strong enough word, but
Right.
it's that complete and utter loss of opportunity to do anything. And you'll get
Mm.
this. You cannot, I cannot, it doesn't matter what I did with my sister. I yelled at her, screamed at her. I was nice to her. I sent her apologies. Like I begged her, even when my mum was dying, I sent her an email and said, can you just act until mum dies like we're friends? So then mum can go to her grave thinking that everything was okay. And she refused. And there was, and I've tried so many different ways to get her to stop over the years. And it's like, I remember one day when I was at my mum's house and mum was away and I was living there and my sister had money for me. And so she was coming over to drop it off. And she walked up to me and she said, I'm not giving you that money. It was mum's. It was mum's money, but because she had access to the bank account and she had mum's key card, she was meant to take the money out and bring it to me. And she walked over and she said, I have the money, but I'm not giving it to you. And
Oh,
she had this
damn.
smirk on her face. And then she turned around and she walked away and got in her car. I remember the level of anger I was feeling. I picked up a rock and I threw it at her car. I was so mad. But it wasn't just the
Yeah.
madness. It was like it, I
The
can't even put it into
betrayal.
it. It's like, what the fuck? Who
Mm,
the fuck gives you the right to treat me like this? Like
right.
who gives you the right? And I had there was nothing I could do to stop it. And
Right.
that's the hardest part for me, especially with the friends, is there's nothing I can do to stop the train wreck. I can't stop the train from smashing into the wall. All I can do is stand there and watch the fact that it's just smashed into the wall and obliterated everything. It's that
Right.
feeling. Of
Can I ask you a question about that?
course you can.
Have you ever asked them why?
Yes. What you mean, my sister? And
Yeah.
yes, yeah. I have asked my sister why, but she won't
Okay.
talk to me.
So all of them you've asked why, and they're just like,
No, there's
crickets.
no response.
Shit.
I
Okay.
used to I used to actually go up to this friend of mine at school that stopped talking to me. I'd look at her and go, "Why aren't you talking to me? What did I do?" And she'd just turn around and walk away. Like she literally just stopped.
Oh, yeah, I'm really curious about that
I
pattern.
Yeah, it's I don't know if it started with my sister. I actually think it started before that because, as you just said, I'm really curious about that pattern. And I went, okay, I'm going to take that thought and see what comes up. And then what I saw, because I thought, oh, it must be what happened with my sister. And then I saw this image come up and went, oh, it's not what happened with my sister. It's what happened with my dad. Is that when I was growing up, and my sister was this is when my sister was living at my mum's, and my sister would have friends over from school, but her friends would talk to me and they would spend time with me, not her. So I think she would like end up going into her room and sulking, and because her friends weren't talking to her or playing with her, they were talking to me and playing with me. And I was young, like I didn't have any conscious,
Right,
critical, logical thinking of, I was just being me. I was just being fun and happy and playful and joyful and kind. And
right.
it happened with a boyfriend of hers as well when she was living with my dad's and I went over there for dinner and he was there. I was talking to him like I was just being me. I was just being nice and friendly. And then my dad actually came into the bedroom later and accused me of trying to steal her boyfriend off her.
Oh,
And it's all these little things where I was punished so harshly just for being me, just for being the kind,
yeah.
friendly, happy, bubbly.
Sure makes you want to be like that, huh?
Really does. Really does.
Yeah.
So I think that it was my dad's constant punishment of me being me that made
Mm,
me kind of go, I'm like, if I understand about the way the brain works and I understand about thoughts now, it made that part of my brain kind of go, well, I shouldn't be me. I shouldn't be kind. I
yeah.
shouldn't be nice. I shouldn't be lovely. I shouldn't be playful. I shouldn't be happy. Jesus, don't be happy.
Right.
That's not a
Don't.
Don't be happy. That's
Stay
just,
away.
that's worthy of punishment.
Right.
But it was also, I think somewhere along the line, it had this, I'm not worthy of having friends or being a good person, or I'm just not worthy of having people in my life. I think that's what it came down to, was I just had
Mm,
this belief that said, I'm not worthy of having people in my life.
mm,
And so I meet people, I'm friends with them. So these, even the, so there were four of us together, and we spent the first, I think, 3 years of high school just inseparable. But then when I hit 15, 16, that's when this one friend stopped talking to me. But then when I hit 16, the other two friends, we had this massive blowout. And I ended up having to leave the school because they turned into bullying me.
mm.
And so I ended up having to leave the school. And then I went to a new school, but everybody at the new school knew the people from the old school. So they already had this preconceived idea. So then I had to leave that school because there was, I don't know why this is all coming up, but there was this girl and her boyfriend was cheating on her. And so I told her that her boyfriend was cheating on her. And then she turned it around like I had done something wrong, and then
Yeah.
created this big fight circle around me and was going to beat the shit out of me. And I just looked at her and went, whatever, and turned around and walked out and just left. Like I walked out of school and left that day and never went back. Um,
Yeah,
but
people
it's
don't
just
want to
this,
hear that, you know.
they don't want to hear that. They don't want to know that their partners are cheating on them.
But you thought you were helping, you
I
know?
thought I was helping. I thought I was being a good
Yeah,
person.
I
And
understand that.
I think it's just that feeling inside of me that keeps creating these situations.
Yeah.
But I think it's also me in friendships. There's no one that's ever really known me. No one knows me, the true me, the whole me. Lots
Yeah.
of people know little pieces of me, but nobody knows all of me. And I have one friend who probably knows more than anybody, but even she, I can't be all of me with her, because if I'm all of me, there are so many different areas that she disapproves of,
Mm,
that I know that if I show her those areas, then that friendship will be over. So I am constantly not being all of me around anybody, because I know that if I am, the friendship is over.
mm. It's not safe to be you.
No.
Yeah. Yeah. I get that.
Hmm. And
Yeah.
then, of course, the law of
100%.
attraction. What, whoever came up with that philosophy just sucks ass. because because then you look at it and you go, "This is my fault." Do you get what I
No,
mean?
yeah, but it depends on how you're holding it, because it's like I do get how you can go, well, this is my fault because I'm
I'm
attracting to
creating it.
me. Yeah, I'm creating this, and that sort of thing. So I get that. I I kind of feel like it's more of like it God, how do you talk about this stuff? It's just like an energetic pull to you. I always call it like your bird call.
It is, yes, yes. Your feeling, your vibration attracts the same, like this light vibration to you. So you're going to. I know that, but also I look at it as, well, you keep getting the same situation put in front of you to show you
But it's all
that this is here.
subconscious. A lot
Yeah.
of it's subconscious. So it's like from that pushed away, in the dark, keep it down sort of thing. It's like it's almost like, okay, so you have like this constant thing, let's just say in your life where your people will just stop talking to you. Well, it's like all of a sudden, it's like if it's not safe to be you, it's not okay for you to be you, and I'm not meant to have friends. It's like that becomes like this, it, like a really heavy belief, and it's like almost imprinted into you. So it's like for that to be able to like experience itself. it's got to keep bringing situations in order to experience itself. But it's like, I don't feel like it's something that we're doing on purpose, because that would be like consciously we're saying, hey, I want this to happen to me. That would be like us doing that, you know?
Yeah.
But when it becomes like conscious and we're able to heal and go, oh, okay. So I've been picking door 1 and 2, maybe. Oh, maybe because I'm open and I have a little more space, I can see that third door because it wasn't available to us before. You know, it's like we only have those options, you know, until all of a sudden the magical third door opens, you know? Until then, no, we're not. I don't believe that's why I'm like, no, we're not doing that to ourselves.
I don't think I agree, we're not consciously doing it. But for me, I think the fault comes in because I've been aware of it for such a long, long time and I haven't done anything about it. That's
But do
where
you
I
know
go, well,
what to do with it though?
uh, I feel like I want to say no. And then there's that part of me that goes, hang on a minute, you've got enough tools coming out your wazoo to be able to deal with this, but also
Right.
not having the emotional space to deal with it and not having the safety either. Um, not having not having this kind of interaction, because it takes for me, it takes conversation to unpack the layers. It's hard for me to sit down. People say, why don't you journal? I say, because it's hard for me to sit down in my own little isolated cave and just write out my stuff.
Right.
But in conversation, then it can open doors. And I think that's part of the reason why I started this podcast or show, whatever I want to call it. Because I realized that me sitting down on my own and journaling is not a solution.
Right.
Community and conversation is my solution, because then
Okay.
I can share, and as I'm sharing and talking, it's easier for me to follow the trail in conversation than it is for me to follow the trail in writing.
Yeah. That's awesome that you found that.
Mm.
We have, yeah, we have tools coming out of, you know, our ass, like you were saying. It's like, that's true. That's absolutely true. The thing is that, well, what do you do with them? Because it's
Yeah.
the same thing with like, oh, well, here's some letting go. Here is some uh uh what is it? Sound healing, and you know, there's like all kinds of different things. But the thing is when, you know, that feels really nice and stuff, but then all of a sudden, usually after these things, there's a big rise of shit. Now, where's my singing sound therapy now? You know, it's like, what do you do with
Yeah.
that?
Exactly. Exactly. Which is also, it's odd because when I first started doing this show, I was actually doing sometimes 2 to 4 calls a week.
Okay.
And I looked at it and went, why am I doing 2 to 4 calls a week? That's insane. But the volume of information that was coming through from the people sharing what they were going through with their trauma, and then me listening to what they were doing, and it's almost like, well, I had that call, but then I needed the next call to answer all the questions that came up from that call, so then I could integrate
Right.
that, and then the next one and the next one. And then
Yeah.
after about 5 weeks of doing 4 calls a week, I just slammed into a wall and went, I cannot absorb any more information.
Yeah.
I am full. I need to integrate all of this.
Yeah.
And then that's when I changed it to, no, I'm only doing, I've cancelled, I moved a whole pile because I really needed to integrate. And now it's like, no,
Yeah.
I'm doing 1 a week now, maybe
Okay.
2, but 1 a week, just so I've got the time, because these are they might not seem powerful, but this conversation with you has actually been really powerful for me.
Yeah.
Going in and I'm finding that these calls are giving permission to a part of me that didn't have permission before, because I didn't
Mm.
have examples of people who had gone through. I hadn't seen that somebody else had actually gone through and done it. And because I hadn't seen that, it was hard for me to give myself permission to do it And this one in particular has been really powerful because of the grief.
Okay.
Because now I look at it
Yeah.
and go, you know what? I feel like I can sit through it. You sat through it. You sat through a load more grief than I've had to sit through, and you're sitting on a mountain on the other side, able to look at it, but it doesn't. I'm assuming. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it doesn't overwhelm you every minute of every day, and you're not overcome with grief every minute of every day, and the feeling isn't there every minute of every day anymore. It might come up, but it's not that grief and that hurt and that pain is not your predominant place of being now. So to be able to see that gives permission to that part in me that goes, okay, somebody else has survived. It's almost like a survival thing. Somebody else has survived this journey. That means I can survive the journey.
Yeah, I get that. I get that.
It was so funny in your message to me on Facebook. You said, we've already had a call, so this one's not going to be as long. And I'm like, yeah, no, you're right. And here we are. An hour later.
If you ever wanted to see what IFS was like, we could always just like check it out together. And if you're not, that's totally fine. But just to let you know, I'd be willing to let you get your toes wet.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
You're, you're welcome.
Oh, this has been such a good call. I don't want to open any more areas because I know if I do, it's just going to go for another hour.
Yeah, trust me. I've been told by other like people, they're like, you can't have it more than 30 minutes or people are not gonna watch it. And I'm just like, well, what about these other people that have like hour-long ones and they have like, like 105,000 views and stuff like that. I mean, what's yeah.
It is such a story because I follow Stephen Bartlett, A Diary of the CEO, and I find some of his content amazing. And some of
Mm.
his calls are 2.5 to 3 hours long.
Oh, okay.
Like they're huge. And he's
Yeah.
got over 1 million followers. And
Okay.
and all of
Okay,
his videos
cool.
get hundreds of thousands of hits. So I really think that is a story.
Yeah, thanks for
It's a
saying
very
that.
old story too, because I
Yeah.
think but it's also, I really believe that that is for the people that one aren't necessarily dealing with their shit and they don't have the focus to sit, or they don't have the
Mm,
desire to delve deep, because these long
right.
conversations, they're going deeper than what you can fit in 30 minutes. If I just had a 30-minute
Yeah.
conversation, we never would have gone into the level of depth that we went into grief as what we did.
Right. Yeah. We'd just be doing our little pleasantries or some shit,
Exactly right. And I think that's one of the reasons, another reason, I keep saying that's one of the reasons, it is one of the reasons, why I wanted to do this, because the interviews that I was watching, they weren't going deep enough for me. I wasn't hearing enough of the depth.
Yeah.
And I'm okay. I had my first call went for 2.5 hours. We just kept going. There was so much to unpack in that.
Yeah.
And some of them have been 45 minutes, but the majority have been an hour and a half.
Okay.
Because you need that first 30 minutes to get to know each other and to feel
Yeah.
safe. And then the
Mm-hmm.
next 30 minutes to kind of go down the journey. And then you hit about an hour and then you're hitting the depth. And then you
Mm-hmm.
need time to process the depth and come back out again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Make them
That's a
longer.
good
Go
point.
deeper. You'll be fine. Um,
Hmm.
Can you, I'll probably put this in somewhere, can you share details of your website? It seems like such a ridiculous question after I have these deep conversations. I'm like, this is such a weird way to end a call. What's your
I
website?
know.
I can just stick it in the description below and people will find it.
Yeah, you can do that. You can put all my little social media stuff.
And I
Yeah.
will.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
That call was just, I'm not even sure there are words to describe the amazingness of this call. I've shifted the grief, like the really intense hurting grief that I had. It's softened a little bit, and I feel like this call has given me the permission to allow myself to actually sit in the feeling. I don't think I've had permission. I don't think I've given myself permission. And I really do feel that that's because there was a part of me that was scared that if I go into it, I won't ever come out of it again. But now I feel like I'm okay. I'm okay to go. And remember, as always, you are truly appreciated. Feeling it too. It's okay that I am feeling it 5 years after my mum's gone. It's okay that I am feeling it 32 years after my sister stopped talking to me. It's actually okay that I'm feeling all of these feelings. That's kind of what I got from the call today. I would love to hear what you got from this call, because I feel like this is probably the deepest call that I've had so far. It went to new levels that I hadn't gone to previously. So if you want to share what you got out of it, that would be fabulous. If you want to check out the description below, it will have all the links to our websites and social media, and it'll have information and content. So make sure you go and check out the description below, and please also make sure you like and subscribe to this channel, and also share. This is such a beautiful call. Please share it. And remember, as always, you are truly appreciated. Mwah.